Hey, Ryan Michael Galloway here with We Don't Need No StinkingRecordCompany.com, and I'm also here face to face with filmmaker C. Aaron Moore, and I might mention degreed filmmaker, which I think is probably a little more auspicious, you know. But anyway,
maybe it depends on who you ask.
Yeah, there you go. But anyway, he's done a great job for me, so I know the proof is in the pudding. And so we talked about pre-production. We talked about kind of the morph between pre-production and production, and a little bit about some of the things that can go right and wrong in production. And now that last phase of making any kind of video, film, or whatever, which is post-production. So what's post-production? I probably know the answer to this, but you're the degreed filmmaker, so
well,
fill us in.
In the briefest of terms, it's where you've got all this great footage that you've planned out, hopefully great.
Hopefully planned.
Hopefully well planned. Hopefully well executed footage.
A lot of hopeful stuff happened at this point, because if you don't,
well, or you could go, all Terrence Malick on it and be shooting, oh birds, trees, and just intercut it with the guitar, and you're making art.
Yeah, well,
I guess
whatever works.
And it may be like that for some people. When they're shooting, they just see a certain symmetry between different things,
and that's okay.
Yeah, it is. It is, and because the way you bring that out is one of the aspects of post-production, which is editing.
So let's think about this a little bit. Now, if I were going to, correct me if I'm wrong, and I know there's different ways to do this, but if I was going to do this, the thing I would do is, typically in production, I'm syncing up with the record that I cut.
Right, right.
And that doesn't apply to some of the live stuff you might shoot, but I'm syncing up to the record that I cut, and that's playing in the background while the camera's going, and I'm lip syncing.
Right.
Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, if it were me approaching it, first thing I'd go into my film editing software and I would lay down the soundtrack.
Yes.
And then I would try to take the chunks of footage and match it up, and either have really quick cuts between a lot of them, or like we did in the slower song. You and I disagreed on this a little bit. I like a little bit more of less of a jump cut and a little bit more of a very quick crossfade.
Yeah.
And you were willing to do that for me, even though it was not the way you would have approached it. And I later on had the film done down up in Drury University, which was live. But they even on my slow songs, they did jump cuts. It was okay. It didn't bother me too much. But my point being that you're going to be able to chop up the pieces of footage and make them jump or not jump, depending on how you want them to go from one thing to another.
Right.
And the soundtrack's going to stay steady all the way through, right?
And that's the great thing about doing music videos, is that it's not like a film where you're having to record audio. Well, something most people don't realize is, and this is because of camcorders and that technology, and actually to some extent now it's even easier, but the traditional method of filmmaking is the film was recording the images, and you had a separate recording machine to capture audio on set. And then you had to sync it back up together and then edit them through, which I've done, actually hand cut 16mm film, syncing audio.
Wow.
So that's why they have that clapperboard thing.
So you can see the click and you can hear the click, and that's where the frames match up. Yeah.
Right, and sometimes people will do sync tone, which is just a process where you
Or
clip
whatever.
a hole, it's a beep, and you clip a hole in the film and then you sync them up that way.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily done to sync a particular take, the way the clapperboard is, but there's uses for that as well that are similar. But what's great about music videos is that you've got that song, so you know how to cut to a rhythm, and you know what shot you want for each thing. Usually if you storyboarded it out, you know what shot you want, but then you might get creative and think, oh, that shot over there, he's singing this line, it's meant to be later, but maybe it works better earlier. But before you get to that fine cutting point, you first want to take all of what you planned, the best takes of what you have. Line up,
load it in there.
Load all your footage, take a look at what makes the most sense to bring in, and then put it at the moment you want it along to the song. Then start playing with it, because it's not just, like you said, it doesn't necessarily need to be jump cuts.
We can do effects between cuts and that kind of thing. I mean, depending on what it needed, what they used to call toaster effects, where you got things, whatever.
Right, and the thing to be mindful of is that you don't want to do any effect that's too gimmicky. That's more of an artistic touch. It can be just straight cuts and fades, but you don't want to be fade happy, because a fade really between two clips generates a suggestion of the passage of
Passage of time, exactly.
And do you really want that in that moment? When you edit and do a fine cut, after you've done your rough cut and you've got things laid out, pretty much what you think is the good sequence against the song, you really want to think about, okay, what's the best effect for this part in the song here? So, for an example, we did a lot of different cutting in Give Sorrow Words. One that was planned out was, and you mentioned this in a previous post, is we had a moment where you had you had Ron and Jimmy.
Yeah, these are the two other musicians I was in the studio with, and we're all around a microphone, so yeah, go ahead.
Exactly, and so we had this thing where I liked the idea of having a very solid composed shot, and I won't go too deep into how we planned it, where on the day of the shoot we had one section of the entire chorus shot with all three of you, and then just one with you, then one with two of you, so
and
that
then one with three.
I mentioned the three and then
so
the two.
I'm sorry, yeah.
The idea being that when we edit it, we fade in one person as you come in, and then fade in fade in the other person coming along.
Or fade them out, and then I'm the only one left there.
Exactly, at the end of the video. Yeah. So we bookended it that way, and I thought what was great about that was, the effect I think was kind of lost when we did it with that bookending effect in a way in Give Sorrow Words, but it was like, let's punch in these voices here in the studio, and I thought, well, let's punch in these images of these people, and it kind of congealed that way, and that's one more of a stylistic effect. It really didn't necessarily serve the message of the song, but it did serve the performance.
Take away. Exactly. Yeah, it was a nice effect.
It served the performance of the moment. But on other shots where you have a line in the song, a face, a hand. So we got shots of your face and your hand.
It got really literal there for a minute.
Yeah, very literal.
But it worked.
And for that, it came to be. But when we were on your face, this is going back to what I was talking about with acting, we needed something contemplative, because this is a song that is very much about thinking about, it's very philosophical, it's very thought-provoking and thoughtful. So let's have a shot of this person who wrote this song and recorded it and performed it. Let's get an image of what he was thinking. What was his facial expression that would get that over? And when you have that shot, you can cut it in where you need it. Now, in Give Sorrow Words, I thought we were a little too quick on that edit. I could have been a little more, and we're talking about mere nanoseconds, but that's something else you find.
And me looking at it, didn't bother me at all.
Exactly.
Which is another thing.
Yeah.
So at some point you just gotta let it fly, because it really is good enough. It's not. It may not be exactly what you thought. Well, Chris, I really appreciate you stringing it together for us. Pre-production, production, and post-production, and some of the things that can go right and wrong in those things, and how they interrelate to each other.
Sure.
And I am Ryan Michael Galloway with We Don't Need No Stinking Record Company.com, and I've been talking to C. Aaron Moore, or Chris Moore, degreed filmmaker and also pretty fine musician. So thanks.
Thank you.